The afternoon sun blazed through the kitchen window of Rebecca Walsh's small apartment in South Austin, casting harsh shadows across the stack of unpaid bills on the counter. She stood there, coffee mug trembling slightly in her hands, staring at the rejection email that had just appeared on her phone screen. The third hospital in 2 weeks had passed on her application. "Another one," she whispered to herself, setting the mug down with more force than intended. Coffee splashed onto the counter, but she didn't move to clean it. At 42 years old, Rebecca had thought she'd have more figured out by now. Instead, she was starting over. Divorced, unemployed, and living in a one-bedroom apartment that felt more like a prison than a fresh start. The nursing career she'd built over 20 years had crumbled 6 months ago when St. David's Medical Center downsized their staff. The timing couldn't have been worse. Her divorce from Michael had been finalized just 3 months before, and the settlement had left her with barely enough to cover rent for a year. She'd been confident she'd find another position quickly. Experienced nurses were always in demand, or so she'd thought. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Janet Coleman, her best friend since their nursing school days at the University of Texas. "Please tell me you're not sitting at home feeling sorry for yourself," Janet's text read, followed by a string of emojis that made Rebecca smile despite everything. "What else would I be doing on a Tuesday afternoon?" Rebecca typed back. 3 dots appeared immediately. Janet was never one to let a conversation sit. "Getting ready for tonight. Did you forget? George Strait at the Moody Center. I told you about this 2 weeks ago." Rebecca's stomach dropped. She had forgotten. Janet had won 2 tickets through a radio contest and had been talking about the benefit concert non-stop. The last thing Rebecca wanted was to be around thousands of happy people having the time of their lives, while she felt like her own was falling apart. "Janet, I don't think I'm up for it," she typed, then deleted it. She tried again. "Can we maybe do something quieter?" The phone rang immediately. Rebecca sighed and answered, "Absolutely not." Janet's voice came through firm but loving. "Rebecca Marie Walsh, you are not backing out of this. I didn't win these tickets for you to sit at home and wallow. You're coming, even if I have to drag you there myself. I just got another rejection, which is exactly why you need to get out of that apartment. When's the last time you did something just for fun? When's the last time you let yourself breathe?" Rebecca walked to the living room window, looking out at the street below. A young couple walked by, holding hands and laughing. She couldn't remember the last time she'd laughed like that. "I don't know if I have it in me to pretend everything's okay." "Then don't pretend," Janet said softly. "Just come and exist. Listen to some good music. Let George Strait remind you what Texas heart sounds like. You don't have to be happy. You don't have to be anything except present. Can you do that for me? For yourself?" Rebecca closed her eyes. The apartment felt suffocating. Maybe Janet was right. Maybe getting out, even if it felt impossible, was better than another night of staring at her phone and refreshing job search websites. "What time?" she asked quietly. "I'll pick you up at 6. Wear something comfortable. And Rebecca, it's going to be okay. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. I promise." After they hung up, Rebecca stood at the window for another few minutes before forcing herself to move. She walked to her closet, pushing aside the professional blouses and slacks she'd worn to countless job interviews. In the back, she found an old pair of jeans and a simple navy blue shirt. It would have to do. Across town in the Travis Heights neighborhood, Daniel Foster sat in his therapist's office, his leg bouncing unconsciously as Dr. Patricia Nelson reviewed her notes. The afternoon light filtered through the blinds, creating parallel lines across the carpeted floor that reminded him too much of cell bars. "You've been home for 8 months now, Daniel," Dr. Nelson said, her voice carefully neutral. "How are you adjusting to civilian life?" Daniel shifted in his chair. the leather creaking under his weight. At 34, he was still young, but some days he felt ancient. 3 tours in Afghanistan had left their mark. Not just the visible scar that ran from his left temple to his jawline, but the invisible ones that woke him at 3 in the morning, drenched in sweat and reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. "I'm adjusting," he said, the words automatic. He'd learned what therapists wanted to hear. "I've been applying for jobs, staying active." "That's good," Dr. Nelson nodded, but her eyes showed she wasn't fooled. "What kind of jobs?" "Security work, mostly. Some construction. Anything that'll hire me." What he didn't say was that most interviews ended the moment prospective employers learned about his PTSD diagnosis. They'd thank him for his service, shake his hand, and he'd never hear from them again. "And socially? Are you connecting with people outside of these sessions?" Daniel looked at his hands. Calloused, strong, capable of so much, yet feeling useless. "I've been going to the VA center, playing basketball with some other vets." "That's excellent. What about outside the veteran community? Old friends? Family?" The question hit harder than it should have. His parents had retired to Florida 2 years ago, and his younger brother, Kevin, was busy with his own family in Houston. They called occasionally, but the conversations felt forced, full of awkward silences and unasked questions. His friends from before the military had moved on with their lives. Marriages, kids, careers that actually meant something. He felt like a ghost haunting his own past. "It's hard to relate to people who haven't been there," he admitted. "They don't understand." "I know it feels that way." Dr. Nelson leaned forward slightly. "But isolation isn't the answer, Daniel. You need to find ways to rebuild connections, even if they're uncomfortable at first. Have you thought about trying something new? A hobby? A class? Something that gets you around people in a low-pressure environment?" Daniel almost laughed. Low pressure. Everything felt high pressure these days. Going to the grocery store was a calculated mission. Sitting in a crowded restaurant made his skin crawl. The idea of voluntarily putting himself in social situations seemed absurd. "I'll think about it," he said, which was his polite way of saying no. Dr. Nelson studied him for a moment, then reached into her desk drawer. "My husband works for a nonprofit that helps veterans transition back to civilian life. They organize group activities, nothing formal, just opportunities to get out and do normal things with people who understand. Next week, they're doing a barbecue at Zilker Park. The week after that, they have tickets to a concert. George Strait at the Moody Center." She handed him a flyer. "I'm not saying you have to go, but it might be nice to be around music, around people who aren't asking how you're doing every 5 minutes. Just something to consider." Daniel took the flyer, mostly to be polite. The concert was tonight. The idea of being in a packed arena surrounded by thousands of people made his chest tighten. But as he looked at the flyer, something flickered in his memory. Listening to country music with his squad in Afghanistan, those rare, quiet moments when they'd play George Strait's songs and pretend they were anywhere but there. "I'll think about it," he said again. But this time he folded the flyer carefully and put it in his pocket. In a cramped studio apartment in East Austin, Christina Lawson sat on the edge of her bed, her acoustic guitar resting against her knees. The walls were covered with posters of country music legends: Patsy Cline, Willie Nelson, Dolly Parton, and yes, George Strait. Her fingers moved absently over the strings, playing a melody she'd been working on for weeks, but couldn't seem to finish. At 26, Christina had moved to Austin 3 years ago with dreams bigger than her beat-up Honda Civic could carry. She'd come from a small town in West Texas, Abilene, where she'd been the star of every local talent show and church gathering. Everyone back home had told her she had it, that special something that would make her a star. Austin had taught her differently. The city was full of talented musicians, all fighting for the same spots, the same audiences, the same impossible dream. She'd played countless open mic nights, sent her demos to every producer who'd listen, and worked 3 part-time jobs to pay rent on an apartment that barely had hot water. Her phone alarm went off, reminding her it was time to get ready for her shift at the Continental Club, a historic venue on South Congress where she worked as a server. The irony wasn't lost on her. She spent her nights watching other people perform, while she carried drinks and forced smiles at customers who barely noticed she existed. As she stood to get dressed, there was a knock on her door. Her neighbor, old Mr. Patterson from across the hall, stood there with an envelope in his weathered hands. "This came to my place by mistake," he said, handing it to her. "Postal Service can't seem to get anything right these days." "Thank you, Mr. Patterson," Christina said, taking the envelope. It was from Horizon Records, one of the last labels she'd sent her demo to 3 months ago. Her hands shook as she opened it. The letter was short. "Dear Ms. Lawson, thank you for your submission. While we appreciate your talent, we don't feel your music aligns with our current roster. We wish you the best in your future endeavors." Christina leaned against the doorframe, the rejection hitting her like a physical blow. It was the same letter she'd received a dozen times before, just with a different letterhead. How many more of these could she take before she admitted defeat? "Bad news?" Mr. Patterson asked, his kind eyes full of concern. "Just another no," Christina managed a weak smile. "I'm starting to collect them. My late wife used to say that every no just means you're one step closer to a yes," the old man offered. "Don't give up, young lady. I hear you practicing sometimes. You've got something special." After he left, Christina sat back down with the letter in her hands. Her shift started in 2 hours. She had just enough time to call her mother in Abilene, but she couldn't bear to hear the disappointment in her voice. Her mom had been supportive at first, but lately the conversations had shifted to subtle suggestions about coming home, about getting a real job, about giving up this foolish dream. Maybe her mother was right. Maybe it was time to admit that being special in a small town didn't mean anything in a city like Austin. She looked at her guitar, the instrument that had been her constant companion since she was 12 years old. What was the point of having talent if no one wanted to hear it? Her phone buzzed with a text from her manager at the Continental Club. "Hey, Christina, I know this is last minute, but can you cover for Lisa tonight? She called in sick. It's a big night. We've got a packed house. I'll pay you double." Christina stared at the message. Double pay would help with rent, which was already a week late. But the thought of spending another night watching other people live her dream while she served drinks felt unbearable. She was about to decline when another text came through. "Also, there's a music producer in town who might be stopping by. Could be a good networking opportunity." Her finger hovered over the keyboard. How many times had she chased these opportunities that led nowhere? But double pay was double pay, and she needed the money. She typed back, "I'll be there." As she got dressed for work, Christina made a decision. She'd give it 1 more year. If nothing happened by then, she'd pack up her guitar and go home. At least she could say she tried. In the suburb of Cedar Park, just north of Austin, Robert Harrison, Bobby to everyone who knew him, stood in his daughter's doorway, watching her pack her backpack with the kind of efficiency that came from practice. Ashley Harrison, 15 years old and looking more like her mother every day, moved around her room without acknowledging his presence. "Ashley," Bobby said softly, "can we talk about this?" "There's nothing to talk about, Dad," Ashley replied, her voice flat. "Mom said I could spend the week with her." "I already told you yesterday." Bobby's jaw tightened. His ex-wife, Linda, had moved to Dallas after the divorce 2 years ago. The custody agreement gave Ashley the choice once she turned 14, and increasingly, she chose her mother. Each time felt like another piece of his heart being torn away. "I know you told me. I just thought maybe we could do something together first. There's that concert tonight at the Moody Center. George Strait. Your mom used to love his music." Ashley finally looked at him, her blue eyes, so much like her mother's, showing a flash of something that might have been sympathy. "That's exactly the problem, Dad. Everything's always about Mom, about how things used to be. I'm tired of living in the past." The words stung because they were true. Since Catherine, his wife and Ashley's mother, had died 3 years ago in a car accident, Bobby had been stuck. He'd tried to be both parents, tried to keep everything the same, tried to pretend that their world hadn't completely shattered. But Ashley had been 12 when it happened, and now she was 15, changing, growing, becoming someone he barely recognized. "I'm not trying to live in the past," Bobby said, though even he could hear how defensive he sounded. "I'm trying to connect with you, to spend time with you before you leave for a week." Ashley zipped up her backpack with more force than necessary. "You want to connect? Then stop treating me like I'm going to break. Stop trying to make everything like it was before Mom died. She's gone, Dad. She's been gone for 3 years, and we can't keep pretending she's coming back." The silence that followed was deafening. Bobby felt like he'd been punched in the gut. He knew Ashley was angry. They'd been through therapy. He'd read all the books on grief and teenagers, but hearing it said so bluntly made it real in a way he'd been avoiding. "I know she's not coming back," he said quietly. "Believe me, I know." Ashley's expression softened slightly. "I'm sorry. That came out harsh. It's just, I need space, Dad. I need to figure out who I am without Mom. And I can't do that when everything here reminds me of her. Aunt Linda gets that. She lets me just be." Aunt Linda. That's what Ashley called his ex-wife now, even though Linda was her mother by blood. Catherine had raised Ashley as her own after Bobby's first marriage fell apart when Ashley was 2. Linda had barely been in the picture until Catherine died. And then suddenly, she was back, offering a life in Dallas that seemed easier, fresher, less haunted by memories. "What time does Linda want you there?" Bobby asked, changing the subject because he didn't trust himself to say anything else without breaking down. "She's picking me up at 7. We're going to dinner in Dallas. Then I'll stay at her place. 7 o'clock. That gave him a few hours. The concert tickets were still sitting on his desk downstairs. He'd bought them weeks ago, hoping Ashley would agree to go. Maybe it was a stupid idea, trying to force a bonding experience. Maybe she was right, that he needed to let go of the past. "Okay," he said finally. "Have a good time. Text me when you get there." "I will." Ashley hesitated, then added, "Are you going to be okay?" The question almost broke him. His 15-year-old daughter was asking if he'd be okay, as if their roles had reversed, and she was the parent. "I'll be fine. I've got some work stuff to catch up on." After Ashley left with Linda, Bobby sat in the empty house, the silence pressing in from all sides. The concert tickets mocked him from the desk. He picked them up, ready to throw them away, when he noticed there was a note attached from his colleague at the construction company where he worked. "Bobby, I know things have been tough. Take your daughter and go. Live a little. Rick." Rick Martinez had been trying to get Bobby to socialize for months. He'd been widowed himself years ago and understood the weight of grief, but he also believed in moving forward. Bobby had resisted every invitation, every suggestion, every attempt to pull him back into the world of the living. He looked at the clock. It was 4:30. The concert started at 8. He could still make it if he left now. But going alone? To a concert? That seemed worse than staying home. His phone rang. It was Rick. "Don't even think about staying home tonight," Rick said without preamble. "I know Ashley left. I know you're sitting there feeling sorry for yourself. Get in your truck and drive to that concert. You paid good money for those tickets." "Rick, I appreciate it, but—" "No buts. You've been hiding for 3 years, Bobby. Catherine wouldn't want that. She'd want you out there, living, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it hurts. You hear me?" Bobby rubbed his eyes, suddenly exhausted. "What am I supposed to do? Go alone?" "Yes, go alone. Listen to some music. Be around people. Remember what it feels like to be part of the world instead of just watching it go by." Rick's voice softened. "You're a good man, Bobby. You deserve to have a life. Your daughter deserves to see her father actually living instead of just surviving." After they hung up, Bobby sat with the tickets for another long moment. Then, almost without deciding to, he stood up and grabbed his keys. Maybe Rick was right. Maybe it was time to try something different, even if the thought of walking into that arena alone terrified him. The traffic on Interstate 35 was worse than usual, an endless river of red brake lights stretching toward downtown Austin. Rebecca sat in the passenger seat of Janet's Toyota, watching the sun begin its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that seemed almost too beautiful for how she felt inside. "I called ahead and got us parking in the garage," Janet said, navigating through the congestion with the ease of someone who'd lived in Austin for over 2 decades. "We should have plenty of time to grab something to eat before the show starts." Rebecca nodded, but didn't respond. Her mind kept drifting back to the rejection email, to the stack of bills on her counter, to the phone call with Michael's lawyer last week about finalizing the last details of their separation. Everything felt like it was closing in, making it hard to breathe. "You're doing it again," Janet said, glancing over at her. "Doing what?" "Disappearing into your head. I can see it happening. Your shoulders get tight, your jaw clenches, and you get this far-away look like you're anywhere but here." Rebecca forced herself to relax. "Sorry, I'm trying." "I know you are." Janet reached over and squeezed her hand briefly before returning it to the wheel. "I'm not trying to lecture you. I just want you to know that it's okay to be present. Even if everything else is falling apart, you can still be here right now, in this moment. The other stuff will still be there tomorrow to worry about." They exited the highway and wound their way through the streets of downtown, past the Texas State Capitol building illuminated in the fading light, past restaurants already packed with people, past street performers entertaining crowds on every corner. Austin had always been alive in a way that Rebecca loved, but tonight it felt overwhelming. All these people with their own lives, their own problems, their own dreams. She felt invisible among them. The Moody Center loomed ahead, a massive modern structure that could hold nearly 20,000 people. Janet pulled into the parking garage, and they found a spot on the 3rd level. As they got out of the car, Rebecca could hear the buzz of excitement from people streaming toward the entrance. Everyone was dressed casually. Jeans, boots, cowboy hats. It was quintessentially Texan. And despite everything, Rebecca felt a small spark of something that might have been anticipation. "Come on," Janet looped her arm through Rebecca's. "Let's get some food in you. You look like you haven't eaten all day." "I haven't," Rebecca admitted. They grabbed hot dogs and sodas from one of the vendors outside, eating quickly while standing near the entrance and watching the crowd. There were families with young children, elderly couples who'd probably been listening to George Strait since his first album in the 80s, groups of friends laughing and taking selfies. The energy was infectious, even for someone as emotionally drained as Rebecca. "See that?" Janet nodded toward a young couple nearby, the man presenting the woman with a small box. "Proposals. There's always at least one proposal at these shows." Rebecca watched as the woman opened the box, her face lighting up with joy, before throwing her arms around the man's neck. People around them applauded and cheered. It should have been sweet, but all Rebecca could think about was her own wedding day 20 years ago. How convinced she'd been that love would be enough, that promises meant something. "Come on," Janet said gently, reading her expression. "Let's head inside." Daniel Foster sat in his truck in the far corner of the parking garage, gripping the steering wheel and trying to control his breathing. The drive from his apartment in South Austin had taken 30 minutes, but he'd been sitting in this spot for another 20, unable to force himself to get out. The flyer from Dr. Nelson sat on his dashboard. A group of veterans were supposed to meet near Entrance C at 7:15. He'd told himself he'd just drive by, see if anyone was there, and if it felt too overwhelming, he could leave. No commitment, no pressure. But now that he was here, the thought of walking into that building, of being surrounded by thousands of people, made his heart race and his palms sweat. What if something triggered him? What if he had an episode in front of all those people? What if... His phone buzzed, a text from his brother Kevin. "Hey man, just checking in. How are you doing?" Daniel stared at the message. Kevin had been checking in more frequently lately, probably because their mother had been worried. The last time they'd talked, Daniel had mentioned the therapy sessions, and Kevin had tried to be supportive. But there was always that awkwardness, that gap between what Daniel had experienced and what his family could understand. "I'm good. About to go to a concert," Daniel typed back. It wasn't exactly a lie. "Seriously? That's great. What concert?" "George Strait, benefit show." "No way. That's awesome. Have fun, bro. Proud of you for getting out there." Daniel put the phone down and closed his eyes. Proud of you for getting out there. Such simple words, but they carried weight. When was the last time someone had been proud of him for something that wasn't military-related? When was the last time he'd done something just for himself? Not because he had to, but because he wanted to? He looked at the clock on his dashboard. 7:12. If he was going to meet the veterans group, he needed to move now. The thought of walking away, of going back to his empty apartment and spending another night alone, suddenly felt worse than the fear of walking through those doors. "Screw it," he muttered, opening the truck door and stepping out. The evening air was warm but comfortable, typical for late September in Austin. Daniel made his way toward Entrance C, his eyes scanning for threats out of habit. Exits, security personnel, anything that seemed out of place. Old habits died hard. As he approached the entrance, he saw a small group of men and women standing in a cluster, many wearing veteran caps or shirts that identified their branches of service. A tall man with gray hair and a friendly face stepped forward when he noticed Daniel approaching. "You here for the veterans group?" the man asked. "Maybe," Daniel said cautiously. "Dr. Nelson told me about it." "Patricia Nelson. Great therapist." "I'm Bill Crawford, Army retired. We're just waiting for a couple more folks, then we'll head in together." He extended his hand, and Daniel shook it, noting the firm grip and the calm confidence in Bill's demeanor. "Daniel Foster. Marines. Semper Fi," Bill said with a knowing smile. "How long you been back?" 8 months. Bill nodded slowly. "The hardest time. Still figuring out how to be a civilian again. Am I right?" Daniel felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. "Yeah, it's been an adjustment." "That's putting it mildly," an older woman said, joining them. She had sharp eyes and an air of no-nonsense competence. "I'm Gloria Henderson, Navy. Been back 15 years, and some days it still feels like yesterday. But it gets easier. Or at least, you get better at faking it." A few others laughed, and Daniel found himself almost smiling. There was something relieving about being around people who understood without needing explanations, who'd been through their own versions of what he was experiencing. "All right, "Looks like everyone's here," Bill said, doing a quick head count. "Let's go enjoy some good country music. And remember, if anyone needs to step out at any point, no judgment. We've all been there." They moved as a group through the entrance, past security, and into the massive concourse of the Moody Center. The noise hit Daniel immediately. Thousands of conversations overlapping, music playing over speakers, vendors calling out to sell merchandise. His instincts screamed at him to find cover, to assess the situation, but he forced himself to stay with the group, focusing on Bill's steady presence ahead of him. "First time here?" Gloria asked, walking beside him. "First time at any concert since I got back," Daniel admitted. "Big step. Good for you." She didn't make a big deal of it, just acknowledged it and moved on, which Daniel appreciated. "I'm a big George Strait fan. Saw him twice in the 90s. The man's a legend." They found their section. Bill had apparently secured tickets in a less crowded area, giving them some space from the main masses. As they settled into their seats, Daniel looked around at the arena filling up. The scale of it was impressive. Thousands and thousands of people, all here for the same reason, all sharing this experience. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. Christina arrived at the Continental Club just before her shift was supposed to start, her guitar case slung over her shoulder out of habit. She always brought it to work, even though she rarely got the chance to play. Having it with her felt like keeping a piece of herself intact, a reminder of why she was in Austin in the first place. "Christina!" Her manager, Todd, called out from behind the bar. "Thank God you're here. Lisa's out, and we're already starting to get slammed. You're going to be on the main floor tonight." The main floor was where the serious tips were, but it was also the most demanding section. Christina dropped her guitar in the back office and grabbed her apron, tying it quickly while scanning the room. Every table was already full, and more people were streaming in through the door. "Who's performing tonight?" she asked, pulling out her order pad. "The Maverick Brothers. They've been getting some buzz lately." Hence the crowd. Todd handed her a tray with drinks. "Table 6 is already asking for their server. Get these to table 3 first, then go take care of them." Christina moved through the crowd with practiced efficiency, delivering drinks, taking orders, smiling even though her face hurt from forcing it. The Maverick Brothers were setting up on stage, 3 guys in their mid-20s who looked like they'd walked out of a catalog. They had that polished, manufactured authenticity that seemed to work so well in Austin these days. She'd seen their type before. Rich kids playing at being country musicians, probably funded by their parents' money, getting opportunities she'd never have simply because they had connections. It wasn't fair, but then again, nothing about this industry was fair. "Excuse me, miss," a voice said behind her. Christina turned to find an older gentleman in an expensive suit standing there. He had the look of someone important, confident posture, assessing eyes, the kind of presence that commanded attention. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I'm looking for Todd. I'm Harrison Mitchell. I have a reservation for 2. Harrison Mitchell. The name sounded familiar, but Christina couldn't place it immediately. "I'll get him for you. Just one moment." She found Todd near the bar and told him about the reservation. His eyes widened. "Harrison Mitchell? He's a producer from Nashville. Big deal. I told you there might be someone important coming through tonight." Christina's heart skipped. A producer from Nashville. This was exactly the kind of opportunity she'd been waiting for. But as she watched Todd personally escort Mitchell to the best table in the house, right by the stage, reality set in. Producers like that didn't notice servers. They came to see performers. The night blurred into a chaos of orders and demands. The Maverick Brothers played their set, and Christina had to admit they were good, even if she didn't want to. The crowd loved them, applauding after every song, calling for encores. She watched Harrison Mitchell watching them, saw him talking to someone on his phone, probably already making deals. During her break, Christina stepped outside into the alley behind the club, her guitar in hand. She only had 15 minutes, but she needed to play, needed to remind herself why she was putting herself through this. Her fingers found the familiar chords of a song she'd been writing, the one about going home, about admitting defeat, about dreams that stayed dreams. "That's beautiful," a voice said from the end of the alley. Christina looked up to find an elderly woman standing there, smoking a cigarette and watching her with kind eyes. She was dressed nicely, like she'd come from somewhere important. "Thank you," Christina said. "Just something I've been working on." "You work here?" the woman asked. "Unfortunately," Christina said, then caught herself. "I mean, yes, I'm a server." The woman smiled. "But you want to be on that stage, not serving drinks to people who are. Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who's been there." The woman took a drag from her cigarette. "I spent 15 years trying to make it in this business. Never quite got there. Eventually, I realized I loved music. But the music business didn't love me back. Now I teach music at the community college, and honestly, it's more fulfilling than anything I did chasing record deals." Christina didn't know what to say. Was this a sign? A warning? Do you regret trying? Not for a second. You have to try, or you'll spend the rest of your life wondering. But you also have to know when to pivot, when to find a different way to keep music in your life that doesn't destroy you in the process. She stubbed out her cigarette. "What's your name?" "Christina Lawson." "Well, Christina Lawson, whatever you decide, don't let anyone tell you that you're not good enough. The business is about more than talent. It's about timing, luck, and who you know. Sometimes the most talented people never make it. And sometimes people with half the talent go straight to the top. That's not a reflection on you. That's just how it is." Before Christina could respond, Todd stuck his head out the back door. "Christina, we need you back on the floor. Now!" The woman gave her a small wave and walked back toward the street, leaving Christina standing there with her guitar and a strange feeling in her chest. Not quite hope, but not quite despair either. Something in between. Bobby Harrison sat in his truck outside the Moody Center, the 2 concert tickets in his hand feeling heavier than they should. The parking garage was nearly full, and he'd had to circle 3 times before finding a spot. Now that he was here, the reality of walking into that arena alone hit him like a physical weight. Through the windshield, he could see families walking together, couples holding hands, groups of friends laughing. Everyone seemed to belong to someone, to be part of something. And here he was, a 47-year-old widower with a daughter who couldn't wait to get away from him, holding tickets to a concert he'd planned as a desperate attempt to connect. His phone buzzed. A text from Ashley. "Made it to Aunt Linda's. Dallas traffic was crazy. Hope you're doing okay. Hope you're doing okay." Those words again, like everyone was constantly checking to make sure he hadn't completely fallen apart. Maybe he hadn't, but some days it felt close. Bobby started to type back, then stopped. What was he supposed to say? That he was sitting in a parking garage, too scared to walk into a concert alone? That he missed his wife so much it physically hurt? That he watched his daughter growing up and felt like he was failing her every single day? "I'm fine. Glad you made it safe. Love you," he typed instead. Keeping it simple, keeping it together. He looked at the extra ticket. For a wild moment, he considered trying to give it away, finding some stranger who might want it. But that seemed pathetic somehow, admitting that he had no one to bring, no one who wanted to spend time with him. Catherine would have loved this concert. She'd played George Strait constantly when they were dating, knew every lyric to every song. After she died, Bobby had boxed up all her CDs, unable to listen to them without breaking down. But lately, He'd started playing them again, usually late at night when Ashley was asleep, letting the music wash over him and pretending Catherine was still there, still alive, still his. "You can do this," he said aloud to himself, his voice sounding strange in the enclosed space of the truck. "It's just a concert. Just walk in, listen to some music, and leave. You don't have to talk to anyone. You don't have to explain yourself. Just be there." He opened the truck door before he could talk himself out of it. The evening air was pleasant, carrying the sounds of the city, traffic, conversations, distant music. Bobby locked the truck and started walking toward the entrance, the extra ticket still in his hand. As he approached the doors, he noticed a young woman standing near the entrance, looking at her phone with a frustrated expression. She was pretty, probably in her mid-20s, with long, dark hair and tired eyes. "Excuse me," she said, noticing him. "Do you know if there's another entrance? I was supposed to meet someone, but they're not answering their phone." Bobby looked at his ticket. "I'm going in through the main entrance, but there are entrances all around the building. What section are you looking for?" "Section 1 to 17, she said, checking her phone again. "That's close to where I'm sitting. I'm in 115. If you want, you can walk with me and we'll find it." The woman hesitated, clearly weighing whether to trust a stranger, then nodded. "Okay, thank you. I'm Christina, by the way." "Bobby," he said, surprising himself by offering his hand. She shook it, her grip firm despite her obvious anxiety. They walked into the Moody Center together, following the signs and the flow of the crowd. Christina kept checking her phone, her frustration growing more evident. "Friend stand you up?" Bobby asked, trying to make conversation. "Not a friend exactly. My manager said there might be a producer here, someone who could help with my music career, but I've been trying to reach him, and he's not responding. I left my shift early for this, which is going to cost me money I can't afford to lose." "You're a musician?" "Trying to be," Christina said with a bitter laugh, "though tonight's just proving that I'm chasing something that doesn't exist. The producer was at the club where I work. I watched him watch other musicians perform while I served drinks. That's probably all I'll ever be. Someone who watches other people succeed." Bobby understood that feeling more than he cared to admit. Watching life happen to other people while you stood on the sidelines, unable to participate, unable to connect. "I'm sorry. That sounds rough." "Yeah, well, that's the music business." Christina stopped suddenly, looking at her phone again. "He just texted. The producer isn't coming. Something came up, so I left work for nothing." They stood there in the crowded concourse, people streaming past them, and Bobby saw his own disappointment and loneliness reflected in this stranger's face. She was about to turn around and leave. He could see it in her body language. Another person giving up, walking away, letting life defeat them. "Do you want this?" Bobby found himself saying, holding up the extra ticket. "I've got an extra. You're already here. Might as well stay for the show." Christina looked at the ticket, then at him, surprise evident on her face. "I can't take your ticket. You probably had someone you wanted to bring." "I did. She couldn't make it." Bobby left it at that, not explaining about Ashley, about Catherine, about any of it. "The ticket's just going to go to waste otherwise. And besides, I could use the company. I'm not great at doing things alone." "I don't have any money to pay you for it," Christina said. "I don't want money. I just don't want to sit by myself for 3 hours." Bobby smiled, and it felt strange on his face, like his muscles had forgotten how. "Call it a mutually beneficial arrangement. You get to see George Strait, and I get to not feel like the loneliest person in this building." Christina studied him for a long moment, probably trying to determine if this was some kind of weird move, if there were strings attached. Finally, She took the ticket. "Okay, thank you." "That's really kind of you." "Don't mention it. Come on, let's find our seats before this place gets any more crowded." They made their way through the concourse, joining the river of people flowing toward their sections. Bobby felt oddly lighter, having someone to walk with, someone to talk to. It didn't fix anything. His daughter was still choosing to spend time elsewhere. His wife was still gone. His life was still a mess. But for this moment, in this place, he wasn't completely alone. And sometimes that was enough. Rebecca and Janet found their seats in section 203, about midway up the lower bowl with a clear view of the stage. The Moody Center was filling rapidly, the buzz of anticipation building as more people arrived. Giant screens flanked the stage, showing promotional content and trivia about George Strait's career. "These are good seats," Rebecca admitted, settling into her chair. Despite her earlier resistance, there was something comforting about being here, surrounded by strangers all united by their love of music. No one knew her story. No one was asking how she was doing. No one was offering unsolicited advice about her job search or her divorce. "Told you this would be good," Janet said, pulling out her phone to take a picture. "Look at this place. It's amazing." The stage setup was impressive, simple but elegant, with instruments already in place and lighting rigs that promised a spectacular show. A banner hung across the back reading, "Straight to the Heart," a benefit for Texas veterans. Rebecca hadn't known it was a benefit concert, though it made sense given George Strait's well-known support for military causes. "I haven't been to a concert in years," Rebecca found herself saying. "Not since Michael and I saw Keith Urban. That was, God, 5 years ago?" "Before everything went sideways," Janet said gently. "Yeah, before." Rebecca didn't elaborate. Janet knew most of the story. How the marriage had slowly deteriorated, how Michael had pulled away emotionally long before he'd asked for the divorce, how Rebecca had thrown herself into work to avoid dealing with it until the layoffs forced her to face everything at once. A family settled into the seats next to them. A mother, father, and 2 teenage daughters who immediately started taking selfies and posting to social media. The mother caught Rebecca watching and smiled. "First George Strait concert for our girls," the woman said. "We're making a whole thing of it. Family tradition and all that." "That's wonderful," Rebecca replied, though something twisted in her chest. Family tradition. She'd thought she'd have that someday. Children, family outings, traditions that spanned generations. Instead, she had an empty apartment and a stack of rejection letters. The lights dimmed suddenly, and the crowd erupted into cheers. Rebecca felt Janet grab her arm in excitement as a voice came over the sound system. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Moody Center. Tonight, we're honored to present a very special benefit concert for Texas veterans and their families. All proceeds from tonight's show will go directly to programs supporting veterans' mental health, job placement, and family services. And now, please give a warm Austin welcome to the King of Country himself, George Strait." The place exploded with sound. Rebecca found herself standing with everyone else as George Strait walked onto the stage, acoustic guitar in hand, dressed simply in jeans and a button-down shirt. He waved to the crowd, his smile genuine and warm, before settling onto a stool at center stage. "Evening, folks," his voice carried across the arena, smooth and familiar. "Thank you for being here tonight. This is a cause close to my heart, and I appreciate every single one of you showing up to support our veterans." He began playing, and the opening chords of "Amarillo by Morning" filled the arena. The crowd sang along, thousands of voices joining together, and Rebecca felt something inside her shift. There was power in this, in shared experience, in collective emotion, in being part of something bigger than her own problems. From section 115, Bobby and Christina watched the performance unfold. Bobby had settled into his seat with Christina beside him, and while it felt strange at first to be sitting with a complete stranger, the awkwardness had faded as the music started. "He's even better live," Christina whispered, her eyes fixed on the stage with an intensity that spoke to her own musical aspirations. Bobby nodded, though he was watching her as much as the performance. There was something about her focus, her complete absorption in the music, that reminded him of passion he'd forgotten he could feel. Everything in his life had become about survival. Getting through the day, making sure Ashley was okay, keeping up with work. When had he last felt passionate about anything? George Strait finished Amarillo by Morning and transitioned smoothly into The Chair, and the crowd responded with more cheers. The energy in the building was incredible. Everyone connected through these songs that had been part of their lives for decades. "My wife loved this song," Bobby found himself saying. "She said it was the story of how we met, even though it wasn't. We met at a hospital fundraiser, completely boring compared to the song, but she liked to pretend it was more romantic." Christina glanced over at him. "She couldn't make it tonight? She passed away 3 years ago. Car accident." "I'm so sorry," Christina said. And Bobby appreciated that she didn't try to fill the silence with platitudes or empty words. She just let it sit there, acknowledged and real. "The ticket was supposed to be for my daughter," Bobby continued, not sure why he was sharing this with a stranger, but unable to stop. "But she chose to spend time with her mother instead. Her biological mother, I mean. My ex-wife. It's complicated." "Family usually is," Christina said. "My family back in West Texas thinks I'm wasting my life chasing music in Austin. They want me to come home, get a real job, settle down. They don't understand that music isn't just something I do. It's who I am. Do you think you'll go back?" Christina was quiet for a moment, watching George Strait perform. "I don't know. I've given myself a deadline. 1 more year to make something happen. And if it doesn't, I'll admit defeat. But sitting here, watching him perform, knowing he started from nothing and built this incredible career, it makes me want to keep fighting, even if it's stupid, even if the odds are impossible." Bobby understood that feeling. Every day he woke up and had to choose whether to keep fighting, to be a better father, to heal from his grief, to build some kind of life that wasn't just existing. Some days the fight seemed pointless, but other days, like tonight, he could see glimpses of why it might be worth it. In the veterans section, Daniel sat with Bill, Gloria, and the others, his shoulders gradually relaxing as the music continued. The crowd around them was enthusiastic but not aggressive. The atmosphere celebratory rather than chaotic. He'd been prepared for his anxiety to spike, for the noise and crush of people to trigger memories he'd rather forget. But something about the music, about being with people who understood, created a buffer. "You doing okay?" Gloria asked during a brief pause between songs. "Yeah, actually," Daniel said, surprised to find it was true. "This is nice." "George Strait has that effect," Bill said from Daniel's other side. "There's something honest about his music. No flash, no tricks. Just good songwriting and genuine performance. Reminds you what matters." On stage, George Strait was talking to the crowd. "I want to take a moment to acknowledge why we're all here tonight. This benefit is for our veterans and their families, the men and women who've sacrificed so much for this country. If you're a veteran here tonight, would you please stand? Let's give you the recognition you deserve." Daniel felt Bill nudge him, and reluctantly, he stood along with several dozen other people scattered throughout the arena. The applause was thunderous, lasting for what felt like minutes. Daniel looked around and saw other veterans standing. Some old, some young, some in uniform, some in civilian clothes. all of them looking slightly uncomfortable with the attention, but accepting it nonetheless. As he sat back down, Daniel felt something shift. For the first time since coming home, he didn't feel quite so alone. These people didn't know his story, didn't know what he'd been through, but in this moment, they were acknowledging it mattered, that he mattered. George Strait launched into "Write This Down," and the crowd sang along with renewed energy. Daniel found himself tapping his foot, his body responding to the music in a way he hadn't allowed himself to enjoy in years. In Afghanistan, music had been an escape, a reminder of home. Since coming back, he'd avoided it, afraid of the memories it would bring up. But tonight, the memories that came were good ones. Nights with his squad, joking and laughing, playing cards and telling stories, finding moments of humanity in the midst of chaos. "Thank you for bringing me here," Daniel said to Bill during another pause. Bill smiled. "Thank you for coming. I know it wasn't easy, but you did it. That's what matters." Rebecca watched the performance, feeling the walls she'd built around herself begin to crack. The music wasn't just entertainment. It was a shared emotional experience, a reminder that everyone in this arena had their own stories, their own struggles, their own reasons for being here. When George Strait played "Give It Away," a song about divorce and letting go, Rebecca felt tears welling up. Janet noticed and squeezed her hand, offering silent support. The lyrics hit too close to home. The pain of separating a life built together, the bitterness of watching someone walk away, the struggle to move forward when everything you knew was gone. But there was also something cathartic about crying here, in the dark, surrounded by thousands of strangers. No one was judging her. No one was asking if she was okay. She could just feel what she needed to feel and let it go into the music. "This next song," George Strait said, his voice echoing through the arena, "is one I've been thinking about a lot lately. It's about second chances, about finding the courage to start over even when it feels impossible. Life has a funny way of knocking us down, but it also has a way of lifting us back up if we let it." The opening notes of "I Saw God Today" began, and Rebecca felt something break open inside her. The song was about finding beauty in unexpected moments, about recognizing grace in everyday life even when everything seems dark. It spoke to something she'd forgotten, that hope wasn't about having everything figured out, but about staying open to the possibility that things could get better. Christina listened to the performance with her musician's ear, analyzing the composition, the phrasing, the way George Strait connected with his audience. She'd studied his career extensively. He was a master of his craft, someone who'd maintained authenticity while achieving massive commercial success. The fact that he'd done it without compromising his artistic vision gave her hope that maybe, just maybe, it was still possible. "He makes it look so easy," she said to Bobby, "but I know it's not. The amount of work, the dedication, the sacrifice, it's enormous." "Is it worth it?" Bobby asked. "All that sacrifice?" Christina thought about it. "I don't know if I can answer that for anyone else, but for me, I think it would be. Not the fame or the money, but the ability to share something meaningful with people, to create moments like this where strangers come together and feel connected through music. That seems worth any amount of sacrifice." Bobby nodded slowly. "I used to feel that way about construction, building things, creating spaces where families would make memories. It gave me purpose. But after Catherine died, work became just a paycheck. I forgot why I loved it in the first place." "Maybe you could remember," Christina suggested. "If you wanted to." "Maybe," Bobby said, though he didn't sound convinced. On stage, George Strait was transitioning into another song when suddenly he stopped, a smile spreading across his face. You know what? I'm feeling inspired tonight. The energy in this room is incredible, and I want to do something a little different. Something spontaneous. The crowd murmured with curiosity, leaning forward in anticipation. I've been blessed to have an amazing career, to play for wonderful audiences like you for over 40 years. But the best moments in music aren't always the planned ones. They're the ones that happen organically, when musicians come together and just play from the heart. So here's what I'm thinking. He gestured to his band. How many of you out there play music? I mean, really play, guitar, piano, fiddle, whatever. Professional or amateur, doesn't matter. Hands shot up throughout the arena, including Christina's. Her heart was pounding. What was he doing? All right, here's my crazy idea. I want to invite some of you up here. We're going to have an old-fashioned jam session. No rehearsal, no preparation. Just pure, honest music. What do you say? The crowd went absolutely wild. Christina felt Bobby looking at her. You should go, he said. If they pick you, you should absolutely go. They won't pick me, Christina said, but she was already standing up, her hand raised high. George Strait's team started moving through the sections, selecting people. Christina watched as a young man with a guitar case was escorted toward the stage, then an older woman who said she played fiddle. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This was impossible. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. Then she saw one of the staff members heading toward their section, scanning the crowd. His eyes landed on her, still standing with her hand raised. You play? He asked. Guitar and vocals, Christina said, her voice barely steady. Come with me. Go, Bobby said, practically pushing her toward the aisle. This is your moment. Christina followed the staff member down toward the stage, her legs feeling like they might give out at any moment. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. She'd spent 3 years in Austin being ignored, rejected, passed over, and now George Strait was inviting her to play with him on stage in front of 20,000 people? Rebecca watched from her seat as several musicians made their way down to the stage. The spontaneity of it was beautiful. George Strait wasn't following a script, wasn't doing what was expected. He was creating a moment of genuine connection, and the audience responded with electric excitement. This is incredible, Janet said, filming on her phone. I've never seen anything like this. Rebecca found herself smiling, genuinely smiling, for the first time in months. There was something about watching ordinary people get extraordinary opportunities that resonated with her. She'd felt so defeated, so certain that her best days were behind her. But watching these musicians climb onto that stage reminded her that unexpected moments could still happen, that life could still surprise you even when you thought you had it all figured out. Daniel watched from the veterans section as the musicians assembled on stage. George Strait was talking to each of them, learning their names, asking what they played. It was informal and warm, the kind of camaraderie Daniel remembered from his military days. People coming together without pretense, just being real with each other. This is why I love him, Bill said. No ego, just genuine love for music and people. One of the musicians who'd been selected was a young woman with dark hair who looked absolutely terrified, but also thrilled. Daniel could relate. That combination of fear and exhilaration, of wanting something so badly while being scared you'd fail, he knew that feeling intimately. Christina stood on the stage, her hands shaking as one of George Strait's band members handed her a guitar. She was one of 5 musicians selected. There was a young guy with a harmonica, an older man with a fiddle, a middle-aged woman with a mandolin, and a teenager with a keyboard. They were all looking at each other with the same mixture of disbelief and excitement. George Strait addressed them with a relaxed smile. All right, folks, here's what we're going to do. No pressure, no performance anxiety. We're just going to play some music together. I'm thinking we start with Troubadour. It's a simple chord progression, and we can all just feel our way through it. Sound good?" They all nodded, though Christina wasn't sure she could speak. Her throat felt tight, her heart racing so fast she thought it might burst. "What's your name?" George Strait asked her directly. "Christina. Christina Lawson." Her voice came out steadier than she expected. "Nice to meet you, Christina. Where are you from?" "Abilene originally, living in Austin now, trying to make it as a musician." "Abilene, good country music town. You've been playing long?" "Since I was 12. It's all I've ever wanted to do." George Strait nodded, and there was understanding in his eyes. "I know that feeling. Well, tonight you're living the dream. Let's make it count." He counted them in, and they started playing. Christina's fingers found the chords automatically, muscle memory taking over where her conscious mind was too overwhelmed to function. The other musicians joined in, each adding their own flavor to the song, and the arena erupted in cheers. Halfway through the first verse, Christina found her voice joining George Strait's on the harmony. She hadn't planned to sing, she'd been too nervous, but the music pulled it out of her. Her voice rose clear and strong, blending with his in a way that felt natural, right? From her position on stage, she could see the audience. Thousands of faces all watching, all engaged, all part of this moment. She spotted Bobby in the crowd, standing and clapping. His face lit up with genuine joy. Something about seeing him there, this stranger who'd shown her unexpected kindness, gave her the courage to fully commit to the performance. The song ended to thunderous applause, and George Strait turned to the assembled musicians with a broad grin. "That was fantastic! Y'all want to do another one?" The crowd screamed yes before any of the musicians could answer. "All right then. How about The Cowboy Rides Away? Nice and slow. Let's make it emotional." They played 3 more songs together, each one building on the last, the musicians growing more confident and comfortable. Christina felt something shift inside her during those songs, a reminder of why she'd fallen in love with music in the first place. It wasn't about record deals or fame or making it big. It was about this feeling, this connection, this moment of creating something beautiful with other people. When they finished the final song, George Strait hugged each of the musicians and gave them all signed guitars from his collection backstage. When he hugged Christina, he leaned in and said quietly, "You've got something special. Don't give up on it, no matter how hard it gets. The world needs your voice." Christina walked off the stage in a daze, clutching the signed guitar, her cheeks wet with tears she didn't remember crying. As Christina made her way back to her seat, the energy in the arena had shifted. What had started as a concert had become something more, a shared experience of spontaneity and human connection that no one would forget. George Strait continued his set, but now it felt different, more intimate somehow despite the massive crowd. He talked between songs about his own journey, about the struggles early in his career, about times he'd wanted to give up but kept pushing forward. "Life's going to knock you down," he said at one point. "That's guaranteed. You're going to face rejection, disappointment, loss. Things aren't going to work out the way you planned. But the question isn't whether you'll fall. It's whether you'll get back up, whether you'll keep showing up, keep trying, keep believing that tomorrow might be better than today." Rebecca felt those words sink deep into her chest. She'd been so focused on her failures, the lost job, the divorce, the rejection letters, that she'd forgotten about resilience. She'd survived. Despite everything, she was still here, still trying, still showing up. "Maybe it's not over," she whispered to Janet. "What? My life? My career? Maybe it's not over. Maybe this is just a difficult chapter, but not the end. Janet squeezed her hand, understanding without needing more explanation. Bobby watched Christina return to her seat, transformed. The terrified young woman who'd been ready to give up had been replaced by someone glowing with renewed purpose. When she sat down beside him, she was still clutching the signed guitar, tears streaming down her face. "That was incredible," Bobby said. "You were amazing up there." "I can't believe that just happened," Christina said, her voice shaking. "I was ready to give up. I'd decided tonight was going to be my last attempt. And then this. Maybe that's how it works sometimes," Bobby said thoughtfully. "Maybe the breakthrough comes right when you're about to quit, right when you think you can't take anymore." Christina looked at him. "Is that what you need to hear too?" The question caught him off guard. "What do you mean?" "You're struggling with something. I can see it. The way you talked about your wife, your daughter. You're at that point too, aren't you? Ready to give up on something?" Bobby wanted to deny it, but he couldn't. "I don't know how to move forward. My daughter's pulling away, and I can't blame her. I've been stuck in grief for 3 years, unable to let go of the past, unable to be the father she needs." "So change," Christina said simply. "Not all at once, not perfectly, but start. Take one step, then another. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop waiting for someone to give me permission to be a musician and just be one. I'm going to play, write, perform, whether anyone notices or not, because that's who I am." Bobby sat with that for a moment. What was one step he could take? What would it look like to start moving forward instead of staying frozen in place? "Thank you," he said finally, "for saying that, for being honest with a complete stranger. Thank you for the ticket, for giving me this night. I'll never forget it." Daniel watched the rest of the concert with a sense of peace he hadn't felt in months. The anxiety that usually gripped him in crowds had faded, replaced by something resembling contentment. He was here, present, part of something larger than himself, and it felt good. As the concert wound down and George Strait played his final song, "The Chair," Daniel found himself singing along with everyone else. The lyrics were simple, but they carried weight. A story about taking a chance, about approaching someone even when you're scared, about risking rejection for the possibility of connection. When the song ended and the lights came up, Bill turned to him. "You coming to the next event?" Daniel didn't hesitate. "Yeah, I'll be there." "Good man, we're glad to have you." Bill handed him a card with the veteran group's contact information. "Anytime you need to talk, anytime you need company, you reach out. We're family now. That's how this works." As Daniel filed out with the crowd, he felt lighter than he had in months. The world still felt overwhelming sometimes. The transition to civilian life was still hard. But now he had people. He had community. He wasn't alone in this fight. The crowd poured out of the Moody Center into the warm Austin night, thousands of voices overlapping as people relived their favorite moments from the show. The energy was electric, everyone still riding the high of what they'd witnessed. Rebecca and Janet walked slowly through the parking garage, neither of them in a hurry to leave. The magic of the evening still hung around them like a protective bubble, and Rebecca wasn't ready to burst it by going back to her empty apartment and her stack of problems. "I'm glad you dragged me here," Rebecca said as they reached Janet's car. "I didn't want to come, but you were right. I needed this. I know I was right. I'm always right," Janet said with a grin, then turned serious. "But really, Becca, I hope you heard what he was saying up there, about not giving up, about the fact that your story isn't over." Rebecca leaned against the car, looking up at the Austin skyline lit up against the night sky. "I've been treating my life like it ended when Michael left, when I lost my job. like everything good was behind me, and all that's left is just surviving until I die. But tonight reminded me that there can still be good moments, that I can still feel something other than despair. So, what are you going to do differently? Janet asked. It was a fair question, and Rebecca took a moment to consider it. I'm going to stop applying for the same hospital positions and branch out. Maybe look into clinics, home health care, even teaching positions at nursing schools. I've been so rigid about what I think I should be doing that I've closed myself off to other possibilities. That's a start. What else? I'm going to stop hiding. Stop declining invitations because I'm embarrassed about where I am in life. Stop pretending I'm fine when I'm not. But also, stop using my problems as an excuse to withdraw from the world. Rebecca surprised herself with the conviction in her voice. I'm 42 years old. I have at least another 40 years ahead of me, God willing. That's too long to spend being miserable. Janet pulled her into a hug. There she is. There's the Rebecca I know. The fighter. The one who doesn't quit. She's been buried for a while, but I knew she was still in there. They climbed into the car, and as Janet navigated out of the parking garage and onto the streets of downtown Austin, Rebecca pulled out her phone. She opened her email and started drafting a message to a former colleague who'd left St. David's years ago to teach at a nursing school. She'd always been too proud to ask for help, too convinced she could figure everything out on her own. But pride wasn't serving her anymore. Hey Diane, she typed. It's been too long. I hope you're doing well. I'm reaching out because I'm exploring some career changes and would love to pick your brain about nursing education. Would you have time for coffee sometime this week? She hit send before she could second-guess herself. One step. That's all it was. But it felt significant. Christina made her way through the crowd, still clutching the signed guitar George Strait had given her. Bobby walked beside her, and they'd fallen into an easy companionship during the concert. Now, as they reached the exit, Christina realized she didn't want the night to end, didn't want to go back to her apartment and the loneliness that waited there. Do you want to grab coffee or something? She heard herself asking. There's a diner on 6th Street that's open late. I feel like I'm too wired to sleep, and I don't really want to be alone with my thoughts right now. Bobby looked surprised by the invitation but nodded. Sure. I'm not ready to go home either. Too quiet there. They walked the few blocks to the diner, the streets still busy with people enjoying the nightlife. The diner was a classic Austin spot. Vinyl booths, checkered floors, a jukebox in the corner playing old country songs. They slid into a booth, and a tired-looking waitress brought them coffee without being asked. So, what happens now? Bobby asked after they'd ordered. After the high of tonight wears off, after reality comes back, what's your plan? Christina wrapped her hands around the warm coffee mug, thinking, I was going to give myself one more year in Austin, and if nothing happened, I was going to go home to Abilene. But tonight changed something. Not the circumstances. I'm still broke, still working as a server, still getting rejected by every label I contact. But my perspective changed. How so? I realized I've been waiting for someone to give me permission to be a musician. Waiting for a record deal, for a producer to notice me, for some external validation that I'm good enough. But George Strait said something up there that hit me. He said, the world needs my voice. Not might need it if I get lucky. Not could need it if I work hard enough. Needs it. Present tense. Christina set down her coffee mug with determination. So I'm going to stop waiting. I'm going to record my own album, even if it's just on my laptop in my crappy apartment. I'm going to book my own shows, even if it's just open mic nights at first. I'm going to be a musician, whether anyone notices or not, because that's who I am. Bobby smiled, and it transformed his face, making him look younger, less burdened. That's brave. I admire that. What about you? What's your plan? The question seemed to catch Bobby off guard. Honestly, I don't know. I've been in survival mode for so long. I forgot there could be anything beyond that. My whole life has been about getting through each day, making sure Ashley's okay, going to work, coming home, repeat. But tonight made you feel something different? Christina prompted. Yeah. It reminded me that I used to have dreams too. I used to love building things, creating spaces where families could make memories. I wanted to start my own construction company, specialize in custom homes. But then Catherine died, and all of that seemed pointless. What's the point of building dreams for other people when your own dream died? Christina reached across the table and put her hand on his. Maybe the point is that other people still need those dreams. Your dream might have died, but theirs haven't. And maybe by helping them build their dreams, you start rebuilding your own. They talked for over an hour. Two strangers who'd met by chance, sharing their fears, their losses, their fragile hopes for the future. By the time they left the diner, dawn was starting to lighten the eastern sky, painting Austin in shades of pink and gold. "Can I have your number?" Christina asked as they stood on the sidewalk, the city slowly waking up around them. "Not in a romantic way. I just feel like we both need someone who understands. Someone to check in with when things get hard." "I'd like that," Bobby said, pulling out his phone. They exchanged numbers, and then, on impulse, Christina hugged him. "Thank you for tonight. For the ticket, for the company, for being honest. You probably saved me from making a huge mistake." "No," Bobby said. "You saved yourself. You just needed a reminder that you were worth saving." Daniel drove home through the empty streets of South Austin, his windows down, letting the night air wash over him. The apartment he rented was small and impersonal. He hadn't bothered decorating, hadn't hung any pictures or made it feel like home. It was just a place to sleep, to exist, nothing more. But as he pulled into his parking spot and climbed the stairs to his second-floor unit, something felt different. The usual dread that came with returning to the silence wasn't quite as heavy. He'd had a good night. He'd been around people, enjoyed music, felt connected to something larger than his own pain, and it hadn't killed him. He hadn't had a panic attack. He hadn't needed to run. Inside, he grabbed a beer from his fridge and sat on the small balcony, looking out over the parking lot and the street beyond. It wasn't much of a view, but in this moment, it felt peaceful. His phone buzzed with a text from Bill. "Glad you came tonight. You did great. Next gathering is a barbecue at Zilker Park next Saturday at noon. Hope to see you there. You're part of the family now. Part of the family." Daniel had thought his military family was behind him, that coming home meant leaving that behind. But maybe family could be rebuilt. Maybe community could be found again, even in civilian life. He thought about Dr. Nelson's words from earlier, about finding low-pressure ways to connect with people, about not isolating himself. Tonight had proven it was possible. Difficult? Yes. Uncomfortable at times? Absolutely. But possible. Daniel pulled out his laptop and opened it for the first time in weeks. He'd been avoiding email, avoiding social media, avoiding anything that connected him to the outside world. But now he logged into LinkedIn and started searching for jobs again, this time with a different mindset. He wasn't just looking for anything that would hire him. He was looking for something that mattered, something that aligned with who he was and what he valued. An opening caught his eye. A nonprofit organization that helped veterans transition to civilian life was hiring a peer support specialist. The job would involve meeting with veterans one-on-one, facilitating group discussions, organizing community events. It was exactly the kind of thing Bill's group had done for him tonight. Daniel started writing a cover letter, and for the first time since coming home, the words flowed easily. He knew what to say because he'd lived it. He understood the struggle, the isolation, the feeling of being lost in a world that no longer made sense. And he wanted to help others find their way through it, the way Bill and Gloria and the others had helped him. By the time the sun was fully up, he'd submitted his application. Would he get the job? Maybe not, but he'd tried. And that was more than he'd done in months. Rebecca woke up late the next morning, the sunlight streaming through her bedroom window at an angle that told her it was well past 10. She stretched, feeling more rested than she had in weeks. The concert felt like a dream. The music, the energy, the sense of hope that had filled her during those hours. Her phone showed a response from Diane, her former colleague. "Rebecca, so good to hear from you. I'd love to catch up. How about Thursday at 2 p.m.? There's a great coffee shop near campus, and I might have some interesting opportunities to discuss." Interesting opportunities. Rebecca felt a flutter of something that might have been excitement. She quickly responded, confirming the time, then forced herself out of bed and into the shower. As she got dressed, she made a decision. No more sitting around in pajamas feeling sorry for herself. No more letting the apartment become a prison. She was going to treat today like a fresh start, even if it was just a Wednesday and nothing had fundamentally changed about her circumstances. She cleaned the apartment thoroughly, throwing away the stack of rejection letters that had been haunting her kitchen counter. Then she made a list, not of jobs to apply for, but of things she'd been avoiding. Calling her sister in Houston, attending the monthly nursing association meeting, going to the gym she still paid for but hadn't visited in 2 months, volunteering at the free clinic downtown. These weren't solutions to her problems. She still needed a job, still needed to figure out her finances, still needed to rebuild her life. But they were steps forward, movements toward engaging with the world instead of hiding from it. Around noon, Janet called. "How are you feeling today? Post-concert depression hitting yet?" "Actually, no," Rebecca said, surprising herself with the truth. "I feel motivated? Is that weird?" "It's the best kind of weird. What are you motivated to do?" "Everything. Anything. I just sent out 3 emails to former colleagues about networking opportunities. I'm going to that nursing association meeting tonight. I even cleaned my apartment, which you know I've been avoiding for weeks. Who are you, and what have you done with my best friend?" Janet teased, but Rebecca could hear the relief in her voice. "Seriously, though, I'm proud of you. This is the Becca I know. Proactive, determined, not taking no for an answer. Don't get too excited. I'm sure I'll have bad days again. But today, I feel like maybe I can do this. Maybe I can rebuild my life into something good, even if it doesn't look like what I planned." They talked for a while longer, making plans to meet for dinner the following week, and when they hung up, Rebecca felt connected to her life again in a way she hadn't in months. That evening, she attended the nursing association meeting at a hotel conference room downtown. She'd been a member for years, but had stopped going after the layoff, too embarrassed to face people who might ask about her employment situation. But tonight, she walked in with her head up, ready to network and reconnect. Several colleagues approached her immediately, genuinely happy to see her. They asked about her job search, and instead of deflecting or lying, she was honest. "It's been tough. The market is more competitive than I expected, but I'm exploring different options, staying open to new possibilities." One woman, a nurse manager named Patricia, who Rebecca had worked with briefly years ago, pulled her aside. "I heard about the St. David's layoffs. That was rough. But listen, I might have something for you. We're opening a new outpatient surgical center in Round Rock, and we need experienced nurses who can work independently. It's not traditional hospital work, but the hours are better, and we're specifically looking for people with your background." "I'm interested," Rebecca said immediately. "Very interested." They exchanged contact information, and Patricia promised to send her the details within a few days. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was a real lead. Better than anything she'd had in months. As Rebecca drove home that night, she thought about the concert, about George Strait's words about getting back up after being knocked down. She wasn't fixed. Her problems weren't solved, but she was trying, and that mattered. 3 weeks later, Christina sat in her tiny apartment studio, her laptop open, recording software running. She'd spent her last paycheck on a decent microphone and some basic soundproofing materials. It wasn't professional studio quality, but it was enough to start making the album she'd been dreaming about for years. The song she was working on was the one she'd been playing in the alley behind the Continental Club the night of the concert. The one about going home, about admitting defeat. But now, the lyrics had changed. Now it was about staying, about fighting, about choosing to believe in yourself even when no one else does. Her phone rang, breaking her concentration. It was Bobby. "Hey," she answered, saving her work and setting down her guitar. "How are you?" "Good, actually. I wanted to tell you, I did something crazy." "What kind of crazy?" "I went to visit Ashley in Dallas. Drove up there unannounced and asked if we could talk. Really talk. Not just the surface stuff we've been doing." Christina felt her heart lift. How did it go? Hard, really hard. She said things that hurt, things I needed to hear about how I've been stuck in the past, about how she needs me to be present for who she is now, not who she was when Catherine was alive. Bobby's voice cracked slightly. But we got through it. We talked for hours. And at the end, she agreed to come spend Thanksgiving with me. Just the two of us, no Linda, no distractions, a real chance to reconnect. "Bobby, that's wonderful." "I'm terrified," he admitted. "What if I screw it up? What if I can't be what she needs?" "You won't be perfect. That's okay. But you'll be trying, and that's what matters. You'll be present, you'll listen, and you'll show up as your real self. That's all any of us can do." They talked for a while longer, and before hanging up, Bobby mentioned he'd started designing plans for a custom home project. The first he'd taken on with real enthusiasm in years. Small steps, both of them taking small steps forward. After the call, Christina returned to her recording. She worked late into the night, laying down tracks, adjusting levels, pouring everything she had into the music. Around midnight, she posted a rough mix to her social media accounts with a simple caption: "New music coming. Made in my apartment on equipment I can barely afford, but made with love. This is me. This is my voice. Take it or leave it." Within an hour, she had hundreds of likes and comments, including one from a local venue offering her an opening slot for an upcoming show. Not a record deal, not fame and fortune, but a real opportunity to be heard. Daniel sat in Bill's backyard on a Saturday afternoon, surrounded by veterans and their families. The barbecue had become a monthly tradition, and Daniel hadn't missed one since that first night at the concert. The job at the Veterans Nonprofit had come through. He'd started 2 weeks ago, and while it was challenging, it was also deeply fulfilling. He'd spent the morning meeting with a young Marine who'd recently returned from deployment, struggling with the same issues Daniel had faced. Being able to offer perspective, to show by example that things could get better, gave Daniel a sense of purpose he hadn't felt since leaving the military. "You're looking good, man," Bill said, handing him a beer and sitting down beside him. "More relaxed. More like yourself." "I feel good," Daniel said. And it was true. The nightmares still came sometimes. The anxiety still crept in. But he had tools now to deal with it. More importantly, he had people. A community of veterans who understood, who supported each other without judgment. Gloria joined them, her eyes twinkling. "So I heard through the grapevine that you've been talking to that pretty physical therapist at the VA." Daniel felt his face heat up. "We've had coffee a couple times. It's not... we're just friends." "Sure you are," Gloria said with a knowing smile. "Just like Bill and I were just friends for 6 months before we admitted we were dating." "You and Bill are dating?" Daniel looked between them in surprise. 3 months now," Bill confirmed. "Turns out, when you spend enough time with someone who gets you, who understands your damage and loves you anyway, good things can happen." Daniel thought about Melissa, the physical therapist. They had been spending time together. Coffee had turned into dinner. Dinner had turned into walks around Lady Bird Lake. Walks had turned into real conversations about their hopes and fears. He liked her, more than liked her. But the thought of actually pursuing a relationship terrified him. "What if I'm not ready?" he asked quietly. "What if I'm too broken for something like that?" "None of us are ever fully ready," Gloria said gently. "And we're all broken in some way. The question isn't whether you're perfect. It's whether you're willing to try. Whether you're willing to be vulnerable and let someone in." Later that evening, as the barbecue wound down and people started heading home, Daniel sent Melissa a text. "Are you free next Friday? There's a concert at Stubbs I'd like to take you to, if you're interested." Her response came quickly. "I'd love that. It's a date." A date. The word should have scared him, but instead, it made him smile. Rebecca sat across from Patricia in a conference room at the new outpatient surgical center, signing paperwork for her new position. The job had come through, and while it was different from traditional hospital nursing, it was perfect for her current situation. Better hours, less stress, and a team that was excited to have her experience and expertise. "We're thrilled to have you on board," Patricia said, shaking her hand. "Your reputation precedes you. Several people from St. David's specifically recommended you when they heard I was looking." "Thank you for taking a chance on me," Rebecca said. "I know my employment gap was probably a concern." "Not at all. You took time to regroup after a difficult situation. That shows self-awareness, not weakness. We need nurses who understand the importance of mental health and self-care, especially in our field." After the meeting, Rebecca drove to Janet's house to celebrate. Janet opened a bottle of wine, and they sat on her back porch, toasting to new beginnings. "I'm proud of you," Janet said. "You could have given up. It would have been easier to just collapse under the weight of everything that happened. But you kept going." "I wanted to give up," Rebecca admitted, multiple times, but that night at the concert, something shifted. I remembered that my story isn't over, that I get to write what comes next. "So, what does come next? Beyond the new job, I mean." Rebecca thought about it. "I want to date again. I know that sounds crazy. I'm still healing from the divorce, still figuring out who I am on my own. But I don't want to close myself off to the possibility of love just because my marriage failed. I want to travel. Maybe take that trip to Ireland I've been talking about for years. I want to volunteer, give back, use my skills to help people who can't afford health care. Those all sound like wonderful goals. And I want to stop being afraid," Rebecca added. "I've been so afraid of failure, of judgment, of more loss. But fear has been keeping me small, keeping me stuck. I want to be brave enough to try new things, even if I might fail, even if people might judge me, even if I might get hurt again." Janet raised her glass. "To being brave, to new chapters, to remembering that life keeps going, and we get to choose how we show up for it." They clinked glasses, and Rebecca felt the weight she'd been carrying for months finally begin to lift. On a Friday evening, 6 weeks after the concert, Bobby stood in his kitchen, preparing dinner for Ashley's visit. She was coming home for Thanksgiving weekend, and he'd been planning this meal for days, wanting everything to be perfect, but also knowing that perfection wasn't the point. Connection was the point. His phone rang. It was Ashley. "Hey, Dad, I'm about 20 minutes away. Traffic was lighter than expected." "Great, I'm just finishing up dinner. How was the drive?" "Good. Linda sends her regards. She's glad we're doing this." Bobby had talked to Linda for the first time in months the previous week, and they'd actually had a civil conversation about Ashley, about co-parenting, about letting go of their past resentments for their daughter's sake. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. After they hung up, Bobby looked around his house. He'd made changes over the past weeks, putting away some of Catherine's things, not erasing her memory, but making space for the present. He'd hung new pictures, including one of him and Ashley from last year. He'd painted the living room a warm golden color that Catherine had always wanted. But he'd resisted. Small changes, but they mattered. When Ashley arrived, there was initial awkwardness as they hugged and she brought in her bags. But as they sat down to dinner, the conversation began to flow. They talked about Ashley's life in Dallas, her friends, her interests in art and photography. Bobby listened, really listened, without trying to fix things or make suggestions or bring everything back to the past. "This is nice," Ashley said at one point. "This feels different." "Different how?" "Like you're here. Really here. Not just physically present, but emotionally available. It feels like you're interested in who I am now, not just mourning who I used to be." "I am interested," Bobby said. "I want to know everything about you, and I'm sorry it's taken me so long to show up in the way you needed." Ashley's eyes filled with tears. "I miss Mom too, Dad. Every single day. But I need you to be okay. I need you to have a life, to have dreams, to be more than just my sad father." Does that make sense? It does. And I'm working on it. I've actually started designing again, taking on projects that excite me instead of just paying the bills. I've been meeting with a friend who's helped me remember what it feels like to care about something beyond just surviving. "A friend?" Ashley's eyebrow raised. "Like a girlfriend friend?" "No, just a friend. A young woman I met at a concert who reminded me that it's okay to still have dreams, even after loss." Bobby smiled. "Though if I'm being honest, I have been thinking about maybe, eventually, being open to dating again. Not now, not soon, but someday." "I want that for you," Ashley said softly. "I want you to be happy, Dad. Mom would want that too." They spent the rest of the weekend talking, watching movies, going for walks around the neighborhood. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, still unresolved issues to work through. But it was real, and it was a start. When Ashley left Sunday evening, she hugged him tightly at the door. "Same time next month?" "Absolutely. And Ashley, thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for not giving up on yourself." The following week, Christina performed at a local venue to a packed crowd. The show had sold out after her social media post went viral, with thousands of people sharing her story about making music in her tiny apartment, about refusing to give up on her dreams. Bobby was there in the audience, along with Janet and Rebecca, who'd become friends after meeting at one of Christina's impromptu performances at a coffee shop. Daniel came with Melissa, the two of them officially dating now. Even Bill and Gloria showed up, having heard about Christina through Daniel. As Christina took the stage, she looked out at all these faces. Some she knew, many she didn't, all there to hear her music. She thought about that night at the George Strait concert, about how close she'd been to giving up, about how one unexpected moment had changed everything. "Thank you all for being here," she said into the microphone. 6 weeks ago, I was ready to quit music and move back home. I'd convinced myself that dreams were for other people, that my voice didn't matter. But then something happened that reminded me why I fell in love with music in the first place. It's not about record deals or fame. It's about connection, about sharing something real with other people, about being brave enough to let yourself be heard, even when you're terrified. She started playing, and her voice filled the venue, strong, clear, authentic. The song was about second chances, about finding hope in unexpected places, about refusing to let fear win. When she finished her set to thunderous applause, Christina felt complete in a way she never had before. This was enough. This moment, this music, these people, it was enough. On a cool December evening, all 5 of them, Rebecca, Daniel, Christina, Bobby, and their growing circle of friends, met at a restaurant in downtown Austin to celebrate Daniel's birthday. It had become a tradition, these gatherings. People who'd been strangers 2 months ago, brought together by a concert and a shared moment of transformation. "We should go back," Janet suggested. "When George Strait tours again, we should all go together." "Absolutely," Daniel agreed. "That night changed my life. I want to recreate that magic." "We can't recreate it," Rebecca said wisely. "Each moment is unique, but we can create new magic. That's the beautiful thing about life. There's always another moment coming, another chance for something special to happen." Bobby raised his glass. "To new moments, to second chances, to having the courage to keep showing up, even when it's hard." They all raised their glasses. This unlikely family formed through music and circumstance and mutual understanding. Christina looked around the table at these people who'd become so important to her. 2 months ago, she'd felt completely alone. Now she had community, support, people who believed in her and her dreams. "You know what George Strait said to me that night?" she shared. "He said the world needs my voice. And I've been thinking about that. It's true for all of us. The world needs Rebecca's compassion and experience. It needs Daniel's strength and resilience. It needs Bobby's wisdom and heart. We all have something to offer, something that matters." "So what do we do with that?" Melissa asked. "How do we make sure we're actually offering it, not just hiding it away?" "We keep showing up," Rebecca said. "We keep being brave. We keep believing that our voices matter, even when everything tells us they don't." Daniel nodded. "We keep building community, keep supporting each other, keep creating spaces where people feel safe to be themselves. And we keep remembering that night," Bobby added. "Not as something magical that happened once and will never happen again, but as proof that unexpected moments can change everything. That one decision to show up, one act of kindness, one connection with a stranger can ripple out in ways we never imagine." As the evening wore on and the conversations flowed, Christina felt grateful, not just for the success she was starting to find, but for this, for friendship, for community, for the reminder that we're all fighting our own battles, and we're stronger when we fight them together. The audience had been calm that night, settling in for a typical concert experience. But George Strait had started a surprising performance that went beyond music, that created moments of genuine connection and transformation. And the ripples of that night were still spreading, still changing lives, still proving that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply show up and be present for whatever magic might unfold. 6 months later, Christina released her self-produced album to critical acclaim in the Austin music scene. It wasn't a major label deal, but it was real. It was hers, and it mattered. Rebecca had been promoted to supervisor at the outpatient center and had started volunteering at a free clinic on weekends, finding fulfillment in giving back. Daniel had been named coordinator of his nonprofit's peer support program and had started a relationship with Melissa that was growing into something serious and lasting. Bobby had launched his own construction company, specializing in custom homes, and had reconnected deeply with Ashley, who was considering moving back to Austin for college. They all still gathered regularly, this found family, supporting each other through challenges and celebrating victories. And whenever George Strait came on the radio, they'd all stop and listen, remembering that night when their lives had changed. Because that's the thing about unexpected moments. They remind us that transformation is always possible, that hope can be found in the darkest times, and that sometimes all it takes is showing up and being willing to let the magic in. The audience had been calm, but the music had awakened something in each of them, something that refused to stay quiet, and they were all the better for it.